Alright, we've got a bit of planning already done over here. We know the different kinds of things that we're going to need to do. So now we're going to talk about preconditions when executing an algorithm. An algorithm generally we can think of as being, in terms of programming, a function. An algorithm is a step-by-step series of things you do to solve a problem. And we generally put those all, in terms of programming, within one block of code that we call a function. So the preconditions when executing one of these functions are the things that need to be need to be the state of things that needs to be current in order for the function to work. So what you'll see in pretty well all well-written programming is a line like this, along with postconditions, but we'll talk about that later. Preconditions as a comment before every function. Every function except the main function, because generally with the main you're just starting the program, so there's really nothing that has been set up to that point. So preconditions. The preconditions for our input method, well, there are no real programming preconditions, but we could say, maybe all of the grades have been calculated, been granted, and maybe validated by hand. Again, it's not a classical programming precondition, but it is a precondition before this method could actually be run. And then down here, calculate averages. The preconditions are going to be that all the grades have been inputted. All the grades have been granted is what I meant to write there. All the grades have been input properly. And why don't we put as well that the proper, or the, how about between, including 0 to 100. There's no use running this program and running this function and calculating averages if the data is incorrect or has been incorrectly input. So what this is going to do is it's going to add up all these grades and divide by 6. And you're going to see a problem immediately that we'll have to fix right now, but let me just paste this all in to begin with. Plus, I could type these in again, but it's probably better to just copy and paste. Won't take that long. Yeah, you'd be prone to make an error if you were copying and pasting the same thing and just changing the numbers. And this isn't going to fit on one line, so that's alright. We're just going to go enter to the next line. And the final one. I think I pasted instead of copied. Alright, and as we saw before, the order in which things is done certainly does matter. So let's not worry about the red squiggly for now and just do the mathematics correctly. And all that is going to be assigned to a variable, which is a float called averages. Right, so the one issue that we're going to have to tidy up right now is that none of these variables can be used in this method because they were declared in another method. What happens is when variables are declared, they are alive in memory until you reach the end of the block of code right there in which they were declared. So since they were declared inside this block of code right here, they no longer live, as it were. so they're not accessible here. So, what's the solution to that? Pretty straightforward. You declare them in the whole class, not within an individual block. And the whole class starts up here, the whole program, and it doesn't end until we get right down to the bottom. So what needs to happen right now is we need to make these declared as being floats, not inside this method, but inside the whole class. So what I'll do is just get rid of the float here. This is as good a time as any to show you the source format. That'll tidy things up. And all those will have to be declared right at the beginning, right up where our buffer reader is, and they'll also have to be static. So, taking a little bit of fixing here. Is a float. So now that one right now can be used everywhere. And I'll just fast forward through the rest of this. Alright, and so now these, just like the BR, they can be used everywhere. And we haven't done anything yet with our averages. That's what that gray squiggly indicates. So we'll print it out. Right, that'll do it. Which is so we'll put in a bunch of alright, don't know if I did that correctly, but it's working. So back to the focus. I know we had to do a little bit of reworking there, which was a good thing to do at this point to appreciate the scope of variables, but the focus should be on the preconditions. The preconditions for doing a calculation of averages is that all the grades have been input and their range is correct. And that reminds me, did we do everything up here? Yeah, all the grades have been granted and validated by hand. Yeah, good enough.